is the culmination of 8 years of experience. That we have as an agency working with, been fortunate enough to work with, Fortune 500 companies, as well as some pretty savvy startups that had more funding than they knew what to do with. And SEO and organic search and paid search was a big driver of growth for each of these companies that we've worked with. And, over the years, we've applied and we've learned, best practices, and some things worked and some things didn't. And what we've done is we've boiled down to what we feel are some of the more essential components and traits, really, of companies that separate the best from the rest. And with that, definitely help make this webinar a success for you, and jot down questions and feel free to engage with us in the Q&A chat. We do have some analysts standing by who work on campaigns, so feel free to ask your very technical, very specific questions. And often one of the biggest feedback we often get from these is it wasn't technical enough, or it was way over my head. So we definitely have those attending who are SEO gurus, and others, this is really your first exposure to it. And I'd like to pride myself in kind of going in and explaining the why behind some of these concepts. And so we'll jump off the webinar and we'll look at websites, and we'll apply some of what we're going to learn today in terms of some of these habits, and see how we as an audience are doing. And I've actually picked at random a few of the attendee websites. So if I bring up your site, apologies up front. We tend to give very hopefully frank and constructive feedback that hopefully you're able to apply some of these learnings and get better results from your demand gen efforts. So with that, we are recording this webinar, so don't feel like you need to take screenshots, and we'll make a copy available after the webinar, and we'll email everyone a copy. And feel free to send it over to a colleague who wasn't able to attend if you see any of it's relevant to you in terms of where you're at with your demand gen efforts. All right, so with that, a little bit about us. As I said, we're primarily focused on B2B companies who go through a kind of form submission type of lead, where it's a multi-step type of process. It takes multiple months, if not years, to close folks. And the reason we have that focus is due to how we track our services. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about that a little later on in terms of some of the best practices a lot of the companies we've worked with do apply. So we focus on search engine optimization campaigns, so running organic campaigns, soup to nuts, paid search and display, as well as remarketing or retargeting campaigns. That's definitely what we do as well. And we also build websites and landing pages from the ground up that are designed to be responsive and render well on mobile devices and tablets, and designed to convert, right? And then finally, marketing automation. More and more folks are adopting, Marketo and Eloqua and all these fancy tools, and really don't know what to do with it once they have it. And get in someone's hands who knows what they're doing to drive kind of nurture campaigns and email campaigns is definitely something we're getting more into. So with that, companies work with us to increase qualified leads, right? Not just raw leads, and we'll talk about best practices on that front. To track SEO and paid search to ROI, and there's definitely some gotchas in that, as a lot of us here definitely know, and then marketing automation support. All right, so with that, let's get into the topic. So again, what separates the best from the rest? Really the four SEO habits we see of world-class companies we've been fortunate enough to work with over the years. And then we'll go right into some of the live audits based off of some member websites that we found. And again, make this as impactful for you as possible. Engage with us in the Q&A chat. We'll answer your questions as soon as we get them. All right, so habit number one. We see, and I like to think that we're in a unique position in that we talk to many of you guys, and really your peers, right? I mean, we work with and we sell to marketers, right? And you as marketers, sell your products and services. And what we find is that when we talk to folks, invariably they kind of fit into three kind of distinct buckets. Those who are really crawling in terms of using digital marketing to drive awareness and business for their business. Those who are firmly crawling or walking rather, and they definitely understand the impact that SEO and paid search has on their business. It's a piece of the marketing mix and it's important to them. And then those who really get this, paid search, organic search is a critical component of them keeping the doors open. They know exactly what it's costing the business in terms of losing to their competitors on a monthly basis, or how much a specific keyword costs them by not ranking in the top 5. So. And with that, we see how SEO, how paid search really impacts the business. And when we get the CEO or the COO or a marketing executive from the company on the line, when we talk about SEO, it's a company priority for those that really get it, and they know exactly, at least at a high level, where they're at in terms of visibility. They know exactly the roadmap in order to get there, and it's not one of those things where it's a dark art that sits in the marketing corner and you dust it off every other month and hopefully you see big wins. And as I go through some of the examples that we're going to talk about, you're going to see exactly some of the effort some of these folks go into in terms of their search strategy. And so we'd like to start with this first one, which is SEO is a company priority. It's not just the VP of marketing or even the marketing intern, and that's another thing that gets me. Often we talk with companies and startups, and they have an intern in charge of the SEO strategy, and we're sitting there, well, don't you do 100% of your sales online? And so why are you going to leave this in the hands of someone who's essentially learning the industry using your business? And it's, I get that a lot of folks don't understand the impact of it, and they think it's about meta tagging and it's a checkbox in terms of the redesign, and it's a one and done. When I look at all these websites every day, and we'll take a look at a few in terms of what goes into a comprehensive strategy. And when we talk about how people are using search in order to discover websites these days, and we see stats like, and this came from Google, 88% of buyers research products they intend to purchase online. And in our world these days, it's kind of a cliche saying, right? You have a question, Google it. And you'd be surprised at how many people actually Google things that you care about, and people that are really looking for your product or service. And unfortunately, because it's not a company priority, they're finding your competitors first, and they're getting first crack at them. So, the second thing we see is, and we see stats like this all the time, and we help track our clients' analytics, and we get insight into some of their closed-won kind of situations, and we see about a 15% close rate from SEO leads compared to 2% for outbound leads. And obviously this is kind of a general stat, and each business is a little different. But when you see stats like these, and it's not just one of those things. It's a kind of ugly stepchild that sits in the dusty corner of marketing, and no one cares about it. It's front and center. Everyone knows where they're at. And it's something that needs to have kind of the best and brightest on it. And what we also see is that internal stakeholders, as I mentioned before, are in the loop on the progress, right? SEO has evolved over the years, and what once was a ugly kind of Wild West scenario where people would build all these nasty links on kind of Indian directories and meta tagging stuffing and all that no longer is the case. Google has gotten wiser over the years. Their algorithms have adjusted to those tactics, and It's evolved to the tune where it's about quality content that you yourself would share with your prospects. It's meant to be educational, and with all those things done properly, it will perform well from a search marketing perspective. And again, we'll demystify, well, how do you get a website ranking, and we'll take a look at some examples, and hopefully it'll be crystal clear how it works these days. But the point that SEO is a company priority, internal stakeholders are in the loop on SEO progress. They don't have to be in the weeds and the nits and gnats, but certainly from a high level, how are we doing according to plan? That question is a tough one for a lot of companies. And when you say, what do you mean according to plan? Well, you should have a plan. What's the Q1 goal for raw leads from organic? And when I ask these questions to folks, often you hear crickets because it's not something that's been done before, and you kind of throw spaghetti against the wall. Hopefully something sticks, and then you go into the next quarter, and it's no wonder we're scratching our head at the end of this, wondering how come we're not seeing a return on our marketing dollars, because there's no strategy or there's no goals. So usually there's a set of clear goals that need to be set out front. And these goals don't need to be hard and fast, and goals are meant to be updated. Don't let the idea of perfect get in the way of better, right? And a goal can be, hey, and for a lot of companies that we work with, I want to get a clear list of keywords that we care about and we're bought into, that kind of span the buyer's journey, awareness terms, consideration, and buying types of terms, and map those to the right pages. That is a goal within Q1, and that's perfectly fine, so long as within the next quarter, the goal should be, hey, let's increase organic traffic by 15-20%. And there's a kind of calculation that we like to go through in terms of identifying what does it cost in the business, how many new visitors are you missing, how many raw leads, how many closed won deals is it costing you to not tackle this thing called SEO. So, having a clear set of goals, and then, we have scorecards that we use as part of our campaigns that we feel really does a good job in terms of keeping those executives in the loop. And, you'd be surprised at some of the companies where they look at, these metrics as part of their board meetings, right? Organic visibility is so key to their business that it's imperative that they know where they're at according to plan at all times. And it's something that board members ask, hey, how come our percent of keywords dropped this last month? Oh, turns out that we weren't able to execute on our SEO content plan. And and you'd be surprised, and some of you might be chuckling, but it's the honest to goodness truth. And if online and you depend at all based off of the website in terms of generating revenue, you need a plan like this, right? And I get some of you, this is totally green, and as I mentioned in the crawl, walk, run scenario, you're firmly, maybe even the you're still in the womb in terms of where you're at in terms of your sophistication. And we've been fortunate enough to work with folks very, very early on in that and kind of grow with them, as well as those who are at the latter end of that, where they definitely understand it, they just need a better strategy. And to kind of highlight why this is a company priority, I mean, imagine you're the VP of marketing, you're the one, you're the shot caller, and you're seeing this as an update for your SEO strategy, right? You know exactly where you're at according to plan, and you know where you're at according to last year. You know exactly you're on track for the quarter in order to hit your raw lead goal or your MQL goal or whatever kind of metric that you're held accountable for or incentivized on. And when you have something like this, it definitely kind of drills down to not just, hey, where we're winning, but where underperformance lies, right? And you kind of use a red-green system, and if it's red, then what was the root cause of that, and what are we going to do differently in order to turn it around? So with that, it creates accountability, it keeps stakeholders in the loop, and quite honestly, how else would you know if what you're doing is successful, right? So this is why when you do this level of tracking, and it definitely changes the tone, and it changes the conversation in terms of what SEO means to the business. So on to the second one, in terms of some of the SEO habits of world-class companies. They measure the money metrics, the SEO money metrics, and this is primarily from a B2B standpoint, right? For you B2C folks, where there's a shopping cart and you swipe a credit card and that's it. I get it. Yeah, you should have e-commerce tracking. You should know exactly how organic and paid search interacts with your business. But for you B2B folks, this one's near and dear to my heart, because when I first entered the industry, going on 8 years ago, we didn't have this level of tracking. Marketo didn't exist. Salesforce was super nasty to work with, and it wasn't as kind of coherent and at least cleaner these days in terms of being able to pull in lead sources, tie it to opportunities and leads within the CRM, and really kind of look from a marketing contribution standpoint how much revenue each campaign contributed to the bottom line. And again, in that crawl, walk, run scenario, kind of the evolution of working with companies, each are at a different stage, right? Some are working with a website that you can't make any changes to. You got to hire a developer, and it costs $1,000 just to even touch the template, and it's no wonder that you don't even want to touch this thing called SEO. Whereas others, you have the right CMS in place, you have the CRM in place, they're connected, you maybe even have invested in Marketo, and you're running some nurture tracks and you've made the connections, and that's great. But what we see in terms of kind of that evolution on the left-hand side that we're going to see here is some of the SEO metrics we tend to track for folks who are early on in terms of the evolution. They look at organic traffic volume. That's great, right? It's wonderful that you're getting more people from organic search. And we'll talk about what, obviously that's not the end-all be-all, right? Just because you have a website visitor, it could be a student, right, who's looking up, kind of doing their research, and they click on your website. It's clear they're never going to buy from you. We look at percent of SEO keywords on page one, and this is a step in even further in terms of evolution, right, where not only are you tracking organic traffic, but hey, these 100 keywords that you care about are important to you, and you're tracking where you are in terms of visibility on a monthly basis. And of those 100 keywords that you care about, what percent are on page one? And even another one would be, okay, great, they're on page one. What about above the fold in the top 5 positions? Because that's where the real action happens. So, you get what I'm saying in terms of that evolution. Percent of SEO keywords on page one. And, of course, this is assuming that you care about, you've tracked the right keywords that you know are profitable. And often that's a challenge for a lot of folks as well. And then the third one, what's your organic conversion rate? Notice I'm not saying overall conversion rate. And, people that come from organic search, whether it's Bing, Yahoo, or in this case Google that we care about the most, for every 100 people that come from organic search, how many actually do what you want them to do? Whether it's do the free trial or contact us or download that white paper, so that you're capturing their name and email, so that your sales reps have at least a shot at all in order to follow up with them and turn them into a paying customer. So and then finally, organic bounce rate. The percent of people that reach your website from an organic search and leave after viewing just one page. And for some folks, that's definitely a negative thing, where you want them to view multiple pages. Maybe sit the home page, go to the product page, go to the testimonials, etc. And so these are some of the things that we tend to track as part of that scorecard that we saw before, right, month over month. And these things should be improving. And if they're not, then why are we paying someone to do this internally? Why are we, again, paying someone to do this, right? Because you should be moving in the right direction. But in terms of kind of what separates the best from the rest in terms of the SEO habits, those that we've worked with who took it a step further, who've made that connection between CRM, the website, to the CRM, Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics, Zoho, whatever system you use to track leads, they measure sales pipeline opportunity from SEO leads sourced from SEO. And what do I mean by that? Well, Many of you, sell to businesses. It's a 6, 9, 12 month, if not longer. We work with a company that had a 2-year sales cycle, so it was imperative that we track pipeline opportunity based off of leads that we help them source, right? Because how else? I mean, it's going to take 2 years to close this thing, but they had a 6-figure type of sale here, and they close one of these things, and it pays for our services and then some. So when you look at pipeline opportunity from SEO derived leads, it then becomes very important, especially if you're paying someone internally to do this. That's their job description, or you hire an agency like us to help with that. But again, that's not the end-all be-all, right? That's pipeline. Closed won revenue from SEO source leads. And again, I get there's a difference between first touch and last touch, and we're going to distinguish that, especially from a B2B type of scenario where there's often 6, 7, 12, 32 touch points along the buyer's journey, from introducing them from a paid search ad to closing them based off of a retargeting ad. And there's a big difference between the two, and I want to distinguish them and kind of make the case for why it's important to do both, track along that buyer's journey. And I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. The third thing in terms of the money metrics, and this is what we see in terms of those who are a little bit more evolved in this digital marketing spectrum. They look at sales contribution by marketing, right? And this is often, we've done webinars in the past on how to bridge the gap between sales and marketing and the importance, and we're big proponents and followers of serious decisions, and they harp on the need for alignment. And it kind of makes sense, right? Where if you have marketing focused on one set of goals and tasks and sales on a completely different path, how is there any synergies? Here you're busting your butt to generate a bunch of leads only to have sales ignore them, and because, previous experience or whatever. I mean, you've worked with a lot of companies where that was the case, but you'd be surprised what happens when you start to close that loop and marketing says, hey, that super awesome enterprise deal that we closed, guess who sourced it? You got it, right? This champ over here who's busting her tail in terms of doing the keyword research and mapping and doing all the SEO work needed in order to help out sales, right? So, and once you're able to show how much, and some folks are responsible for 20% of, the opportunities, and more, businesses, they start to have quotas for marketing, and I get that's a daunting thing, but it's also liberating too, where you're not just getting eyeballs on a website. Hey, you're responsible for driving business, right? And once you've made those connections, and we'll talk about how companies are doing that more and more these days here in a second. But this is kind of what we see in terms of measuring the money metrics, right? On the left-hand side, I would argue the majority of those on this webinar might still be looking at those things in terms of success metrics. Maybe not even that. But on the right, you see a clear distinction, and we'll talk about the importance of why that matters. So, imagine, and this is kind of highlighting why it doesn't make sense to just track leads and stop there. And a lot of folks that we've worked with, and we continue to work with, and we're trying our best to kind of help them make that connection. This is why it doesn't make sense to just track leads. Imagine you're the digital marketing manager, and you look at this report and you don't have the right side here. You're just looking at the left side here. You're at the end of the year, and you have your marketing investment, and you're about to double down on one of these 3 areas. And you see, hey, my social campaigns, assuming you've tagged them properly, and we can talk about UTM tracking all day, and that's a topic for another day. So imagine you're the marketing manager, and again, you're deciding where to spend your budget. And you see 10 leads from social, 5 from paid search, and 2 from SEO. And you're saying, gosh, that SEO investment, we did all that hard work, and it didn't pan out. I only got 2 leads, right? I got 10 from social. That's awesome. But had you made that connection and tie it to pipeline and tie it to closed won, which still the majority of people haven't done that, you would have been making a huge mistake, right? Because when you see the revenue opportunity generated from these leads, you see about 275 grand from those 2 leads versus 85 from the social side of things. And at worst, you're spending more dollars on getting leads that lead to smaller ticket items. And what does that do? That eats up your sales reps' time. And so they're spending, the 3-6 months on the buyer's journey on leads that generate smaller ticket items, whereas, hey, it turns out there's more opportunity on the SEO side. We just needed to expand the keywords, map them to the right pages, and we'll talk about some of those things here in a second. We would have gotten way more revenue from that. And so, therefore, I should have doubled down on my SEO campaign as opposed to doubling down on the social. So, and this is kind of a head-smacking type of view here, but this happens all the time. We talk to people and they still haven't made these connections, and and they're at worst they're working with an agency, and they're doing this, and so. That's why it's important to close that loop, get this information in the hands of the person deciding, do I bid up this keyword? Do I double down on this one from an SEO perspective? Because it can really make or break the business. So again, on to this third point here, which is they track along the buyer's journey, right? So some of the SEO best practices of world-class companies, they recognize that, it's not just a one-and-done type of sale, right? Often, we're talking to some folks who are on this webinar that have 6, 9, 12-month sales cycles, and it's a complex thing. And just because someone finds you on organic search does not mean they're going to buy from you the next day. And so, for our business, we track this too, and often, it's a 90-day sales cycle, right? They're vetting other agencies. They want to see if we're the right fit. You do all this tracking and what have you. So it's not just, you attend a webinar, you download one of our ebooks, and you're going to work with us the next day. So I want to highlight why it's important to track along the buyer's journey. So let's say, John Smith, I am a prospect. Let's say you sell marketing automation software, right? So naturally, an organic search term you want to do well for, or you might want to pay for, is marketing automation software. But, that might be a cost-prohibitive term. Google might charge us 20 bucks a click, right? So on the surface, it might seem, gosh, that keyword, I don't even want to touch it. 20 bucks a click. But your average sale price is 10 grand, right? So let's keep that in the back of our mind here when we're deciding whether or not to double down on that particular term. And the importance of tracking multi-touch. So let's say you've optimized your website, you've done your due diligence, you mapped the keywords to the right pages, you've meta tagged the heck out of your website. Marketing automation software. A prospect goes to Google, does an organic search for it, clicks on your website because you did an awesome job on your SEO, and guess what? This John, I'm not ready to, they're asking for 7 fields. I don't have time for this. I'm going to go to lunch, right? Started on his desktop, did that search, then went to lunch. While he's on his browser, on his mobile device, then because you're a savvy marketer, you ended up doing a remarketing or retargeting campaign, and you start serving up banner ads on New York Times, right? Then John says, oh yeah, you know what, let me go ahead and give it a shot now. I'm, my Chipotle, hopefully I don't get a stomach virus, and I finally fill out the form. So John clicks on the ad, downloads the ebook. Remember, a separate device, separate session. Then, hopefully your lead development rep or your SDR, or whatever you call them internally, hopefully you even have one of those where you're able to follow up with this lead, call John, vet him for budget, need, timing, and authority, and finally, at the end of this, your sales rep hopefully uses Salesforce or the CRM properly, closes it out with the lead source attached to it, and finally becomes a paying customer at $10,000. Guess what? If you haven't done this level of tracking, you would have lost all of this on the left-hand side, all of it. And worse, maybe your sales reps kind of work outside the Salesforce flow and says, I'm going to go ahead and create a new lead outside the flow, and it's a sales sourced lead, closed one, 10 grand. And some of you shake your head and you're saying that would never happen. Well, you'd be surprised. We work with a lot of companies that they haven't done that, and there's no kind of rules in place. And But this absolutely happens, so it's imperative that, and this is why, one of the first questions we ask when we work with companies is, tell me about your sales cycle. How many stages in the buyer's journey? Does sales use CRM properly? These types of things are imperative because we're looking for these types of instances that can happen. And imagine you're looking at your opportunities and you see this. Right? You see first touch source organic. Oh, the first touch page. Right? Google stripped organic keywords years ago. This is why we pull in the page that they land on. And often this was an anonymous visitor, right? John Smith was not self-identified in that first visit. He just clicked on organic listing and then bounced, right? Went to lunch in Chipotle on a separate mobile device, and then finally, did a kind of separate keyword search for best marketing automation platform, and then finally clicked on your landing page and became a closed won business. But here's the kicker for me. For some of you who've actually done this level of tracking, one, God bless you. I mean, you're in the minority. But the second point I want to make here is you need to get this information in the hands of the person doing the optimizations. Right, so and often we've seen this too. They've invested in a visible or bright funnel or whatever system. We've actually built a tool similar to this to help with that. Right, often you don't need all the bells and whistles and reporting, but you need to get this information in the hands of the person deciding, do I bid on that keyword marketing automation software? It's $20 a click, but if it generated $100,000 in close one business and my average position is 4, I got 100,000 reasons to bid that keyword up, right? And often that doesn't happen. Getting this type of information in the hands of someone who's deciding, do I bid this up, do I bid this down, because it generates revenue. Right, so master close loop reporting, and we're still on that, tracking along the buyer's journey here, and that's a best practice. Someone does a search for medical devices, they can either click on a paid search or an organic listing, right? But often there's a gap between, and we highlighted that with John Smith and doing a search on the desktop and going to lunch, right? The connection a lot of folks don't make, though, and again, we built a tool to help do this level of tracking. It's all about tagging the web to lead form, whether you use the Salesforce web to lead form or the Marketo form or whatever form you use. We had a couple of additional hidden fields that sit on the back end, and we populate it via some JavaScript. And the same tools that I mentioned, like Visible and some of those out there, you do the same process, right? Regardless of how you end up doing it, just know it's possible, and B, should be probably doing this, especially if you depend at all on digital marketing, right? Especially if you have a high ticket item like a $50,000 deal, and being able to look at where did originally John Smith, did I introduce him? What page did he originally land on? And finally, doing the heavy lifting, the first touch, and then what was the last touch prior to filling out the web form, becoming a raw lead, and I need to then map all this to opportunity. And we have a lot of experience in kind of doing this level of tracking, and it's not just, and I get this isn't meta tagging, right? This is not keywords and page titles. This is being able to track the return on investment and then changing your strategy based off of what's working. Super, super important. And the type of analysis that you can make, again, I'm the kind of optimizer. I'm looking at, these landing pages, here are the keyword themes, here's how many leads, here's how much deal value. I need to expand keywords based off of this theme, dial back on the other ones, which is why it's very, very important to have a keyword mapping document. All right, so the fourth and final thing before we start to go through these live audits here, with the 30 minutes that we have left. And again, submit your URL within the Q&A chat if you'd like for us to take a quick look. If we don't get a chance today, we'll definitely reach out afterwards to see if we can do that. So type in your URL and the number one keyword that you care about, and we'll kind of go through and break it apart, hopefully supply you with some good recommendations. So we've done a couple of these already, of these webinars. And this one might look familiar. We did this one on one of our first webinars, and it was so important that I'm going to reiterate it again. And in fact, in the 2 examples I'm about to go through, we're going to learn exactly why this is important. And one of the last habits that we often see is that savvy marketers, those who really get it, they start by putting themselves in their customer's shoes, and they ask a question: what are they searching for? And often they do this before they write content, right? And often, folks get, much as when we were in school, and there's an order of operations, right? You got to multiply first, then you do the subtraction, and then you do that. Folks get it backwards, right? And because there's no degree in this stuff, right? We're all kind of just winging it until we get it, hopefully, and we keep our jobs. But often we'll talk with folks, and they say, "Hey, I redesigned the website, and now I'm ready to optimize." And then I have to break the bad news to them and say, guess what? Because you didn't put yourself in your customer's shoes, we've got to redo the content, right? You say you want to rank for this keyword, but there's no page on the website at all that has anything to do with this. So, and then I show them, well, look at what your competitor did, right? And they have a page, they have a whole section, they got a kind of glossary section, FAQ, and it's just like there's no way we're going to displace them, right? So we're only left by paying for that visibility, paying on that keyword. So, in order of operations, they start by putting themselves in their customer's shoes first. Then they identify the keywords, then they map them to the right pages. They then do a content gap analysis, right? Where are the gaps? Then they write the content, and then they kind of iterate thereafter, tracking the revenue, changing their strategy based off of what's working, dialing back on what's not. And while what I just said probably makes total sense, the majority of people I talk to don't go through that process, right? They use internal jargon instead of what your audience is actually searching for. Keywords that you should target should span top, middle, and bottom of the funnel. And ideally, you have offers to match. And these are kind of steps towards that evolving and kind of getting better results. And it all starts by putting yourself in your customer's shoes. So when they do that, they often find that, hey, by putting myself in my customer's shoes, I'm going to invest in content, right? Because we did that content gap analysis. But you got to target the right group of keywords based off of who your audience is. And the example I'm going to go through here is two different distinct buyers that we tend to sell to, right? Marketing analysts and managers, CMOs. They care about very, very different things, much as your business probably does too, right? You probably sell to who knows what, but you have younger people that you sell to, or lower level in the food chain and higher level, and they care about very different things. So an awareness thing for our business, and again, as I go through this example, think of how it applies to your business. A blog I might write for our business is, for the analyst, is 5 conversion rate optimization hacks to lower your pay-per-click cost per lead, right? That's a very tactical thing. The CMO side probably puke on it and say, no, I don't have time for this. Whereas the CMO, hey, 7 ways to drive revenue with SEO this quarter. That's very much up at that alley. And he might, forward it on to the marketing analyst and say, hey, please read this, right? And that happens all the time. But I did the heavy lifting of identifying, okay, what do they both care about? What keyword terms might match that? Right, and a fourth column here might be keywords that I identify that match each one of these. Right, an evaluation type of search or topic for our business might be, how to build an integrated organic and paid search program. Right, very much in line with that analyst who that's their job to do. Whereas a CMO topic might be the cost of not ranking, how to calculate your SEO opportunity. What is it costing your business to not tackle this thing? And then at the kind of latter stage, right? So you guys get the point here. And then, of course, you identify where am I missing, you kind of come up with a content calendar, and that's how you iterate and get better results. All right, so I'm going to recap here, and then I'm going to go through the live audits here with the remaining time we have left. And you guys want to stick around because I have some good examples that some of you where, maybe a third of this information I walk through might have been helpful. These examples will definitely help you if none of this was relevant to you. So SEO Habits World-Class Company. So 1, SEO is a company priority, and we talked about why that was, right? And some of the reporting that goes into that and how some track this. They measure the SEO money metrics, right? They don't just look at traffic and bounce rate and that type of thing. They track along the buyer's journey, and I walk through a very hopefully clear example of John Smith and avoiding that stomach virus from Chipotle. And then the fourth one, they put themselves in their customer's shoes, right? And we talked about the importance of identifying internal jargon and separating that from what your audience is searching for actually. And then the order of operations, right? You do the content first, then you care about kind of redesigns and that type of thing. All right, so live analysis. So again, submit your URL in the Q&A chat. Again, if we don't have time to do it now, we'll definitely get to you and hopefully schedule some time to kind of walk through what we're seeing. So with that, let's take a look at a couple of, and again, if I choose your site, and apologies if I kind of choose it and dump on it a bit, that's not my intent. It's to help you get better results. So the first one that we saw is a company called Transcat. Here they are at the top right here. Right, and it looks like they are a reseller of test and measurement instruments, right? So a reseller of other products, and that's a tough one, right? Because often you're probably trying to go after those companies' kind of branded terms, right? And it's tough to. It's like Sephora when they're trying to rank for a specific product when the company who sells that ranks #1, and it can be a difficult thing. But I've worked with campaigns where that was the case before, and you can actually displace, believe it or not, someone else's branded name, especially if you've done your SEO and you have a strong domain authority. It can and does happen. Okay, so let's take a look at the site really quickly, and I want to highlight one of the things we just learned, which is putting yourselves in your customer's shoes. And so there's a few things that we look at, or that Google looks at when they're deciding to rank your website higher for a specific keyword. And I talk about the 200 variables that they look at, and so each one of these things I want to talk about are one variable of the 200 that they consider as part of their algorithm when they're deciding to rank Transcat higher for test and measurement instruments as that keyword than one of their competitors, right? So one of the things they look at is keywords within page titles, right? And this should not be news to some of you, right? This should be, yeah, they look at that, and the order does matter, right? Sometimes getting keywords closer to the first part of it, so test and measurement instruments, Transcat, that might be an area that I look at and I test to see, if I'm on page 1 below the fold, that might get me some better movement. Getting keywords within meta descriptions, right? And notice it's getting truncated here. This is kind of your ad on Google, and right now they're probably not putting their best foot forward, right? Whereas, someone down below might do a better job in terms of that meta description. They may look at this and say, these guys aren't relevant. Really, it's these guys down here, or, that type of thing. So, and again, I'm doing a branded search here. So we'll do a search for that actual keyword, but I also want to highlight, look at how they mentioned it, test ampersand measurement instruments. There's a difference between test spelling out and measurement instruments and test ampersand measurement instruments. And I want to highlight here and I use this, and again, we're putting ourselves in our customer's shoes. And we're saying, okay, customer, what are you actually doing searches for? And when I see test ampersand measurement instruments, there's 20 searches a month, right? But when I do test and spelled out measurement instruments, there's what, 3-4 times volume. True, it's on the lower end here, but when we talk about long tail traffic and how all that adds up, this can be a very big deal. And the fact that I found this just by looking at these guys' homepage, and that's kind of, Google looks at your website as a book. Your homepage is the most important page of your site, and they've essentially wasted that property on an area that gets, on a keyword that gets a quarter of the volume of something else that had they put themselves in their customer's shoes, map these keywords to the right pages, mention the term within the content, they'd be getting a much different outcome, right? And I'm doing a search for test ampersand measurement instruments, and here they are right there below the fold on page 1, right? And if you rank in the 9th position for that particular keyword, you're not getting that much click-through rate, right? And there's been studies over the years and that say the percent click-through rate if you're ranked in the 1, 2, 3 position versus the 9th and 10th. But there they are below the fold with that test ampersand, a keyword that gets 20 searches a month. But when I do a search for test and measurements, they're actually not that bad either. They're not that bad either for that particular term. Here, let's make sure I do a search there for it. Oh, no, I take that back. They dropped off of page 1 entirely for that term, right? So when they were in the 9th position for test ampersand measurement instruments, they had now dropped off of page 1 for that particular term. Here, let's go on page 2. Maybe they're lingering around there. Yep, sure enough, there they are, page 2. So a keyword that gets 90 searches a month, 3 times the volume there, or a little bit more than that, they're on page 2 for it. So that's just a couple of the kind of elements that we're looking at. But, we use tools, and if you attended one of our other webinars, you will see me use a few tools to kind of compare websites, right? And we love to use Moz, formerly SEO Moz, back in the day for you old school SEOites. But we love this tool for a few reasons. It allows us to compare web pages and kind of look at, of those 200 variables that Google considers, what's going on and how am I going to change my strategy. So I'm going to go ahead and pick a competitor here who does well for that particular keyword and say, okay, Mike, so you mentioned, putting yourself in your customer's shoes, mapping them the right pages, and making sure that I mention the right keywords. That's one of the elements. And notice these guys right here, Tektronix. What did they do? They were smart. They knew that there was a difference between ampersand and spelling out and they said, okay, I'm going to mention it in that order on the page itself, right? As did Omega up here, right? And of course, they got it within the meta description as well. So, two of those variables that they're beating these guys Transcat, and they're sitting on page 2. They're probably sitting there wondering how come we're not getting better results from our SEO campaigns. So I'm going to compare these guys, tech.com, and I'm going to compare Transcat. I go through this to show you, how to use this tool, right? So I use Open Site Explorer from Moz. It's a paid tool that we like to use. And if you care at all about your business or you have someone internally that's working on this, I'm going to show you just quickly. I mean, I could spend a whole webinar just on going through this tool alone, how to use it and that type of thing. But I'm just going to kind of quickly go through what's going on here. So I'm going to compare tech.com and I'm going to compare Transcat, right? Because that's what we're trying to figure out what's going on here. And who's ranking for what. So I'm going to go ahead and do compare link metrics. I'm going to add these guys in here. And we're going to see side by side what's going on, right? And so there's a few things that stick out to me. One, I look at, and there's a lot of mumbo jumbo on this with Moz rank and page this, but I care about total linking root domains. What does that mean? That means the number of URLs that link to tech.com versus Transcat. And right now they have 1,800 links pointing to tech.com versus Transcat's 120. Right, so right away that stands out to me. That is a discrepancy. That's something that I want to focus on, right? And often that's why companies hire PR firms. Any SEO kind of company that you work with should have a plan of attack in order to bridge that gap. And there's a difference between quality and quantity, right? Just because one of these links might be, one of the 120 might be worth 1,800. I've seen that happen, right? You get a link from TechCrunch or a well-known, Yahoo Finance, and it's a do follow link, and I don't want to talk about the difference between the two right now, but just suffice it to say one passes SEO value and one does not. So that stands out to me. The other thing that stands out to me is that they have a much larger website, right? So they have 63,000 other links internally, internal equity passing links, passing the value to this specific homepage, right? So it's well interlinked within the website versus 1,752 internal pages referencing the homepage, right? SEO equity is passed from page to page by linking to one another. So when I'm looking at the comparisons here, I'm thinking, okay, that's another thing that stands out. But a couple of the variables, right? So they've mapped the right keywords, they put themselves in their customer's shoes. Now let's see what they're doing on the linking front. So I'm clicking on this anchor text tab, and SEO, if it has a black eye at all, it's many years ago, folks would do what we call exact match anchor text linking, meaning get the keyword that you want to rank for in someone else's website, referencing your website exactly. And over the years, Google looked at those links and said they're unnatural, right? I'm gonna dock your website because of it. And so here are all the links on other websites referencing Tektronix, and I want to highlight this one right here, Tektronix Test and Measurement Equipment. Remember the search I did a search for? Test and measurement instruments, right? So this helps them, right? So there's 6 links using that exact brand plus keyword, and I love that type of strategy. And here I can look at some of these, right? And it looks relevant. We're not talking about some random, I mean, I did a webinar a few years ago on Target, and Google leveled a manual penalty against them. They got the keywords dresses on auto blogs, right? So they work with a pretty shady agency that got dresses on auto blogs, exact match, anchor text, link, voting for Target's deeper dresses page. Someone found that out. They had to level a manual penalty against them, and they lost a lot of organic traffic because of that. But that's not what we're seeing here. We're seeing electronic definitions, right? So industry types of directories. These don't have to be beautiful websites, partner websites. When I look, so Google hits this definitions on electronics, they hit test and measurement equipment, they go to the bottom left destination, all the way in the bottom left here, with that term in mind. Helps them rank better for test and measurement equipment and derivatives thereof. In this case, the test and measurement instruments term that they do quite well for. Right, and so if I were to go through all these other ones, so as a plan of attack, I might export this, reach out to some of these if I'm Transcat to try to bridge that gap, right? Because they got 120 links going up against 1,800. But again, I'm assuming that this is a profitable keyword. Unless I've closed that loop like we talked about earlier on, that's why it's important to do that closed loop type of scenario. Otherwise, you don't know which keywords are profitable. You're going through all the blood, sweat, and tears needed to get that visibility. So, hopefully some of this was helpful. I do actually have one more example that I know I have 7 minutes left, but some of you guys might want to see this one. Kind of similar process that I've gone through. And again, if you want to take advantage of this, I'm actually going to bring this slide up right here. It's a 30-minute consultation. We'll help you kind of go through the similar analysis, right? If you want to know what it's costing your business to not tackle SEO, reach out in the Q&A chat right now, and we'll set up a quick call, either later this week or early next week. But I want to go through one more example before I lose everyone right now. Similar, and hopefully you'll pull some nuggets from it. So type in the Q&A chat if you want to kind of take advantage of this type of analysis, and I'd be happy to do it personally. All right, so let's do another example here. And this one was actually quite interesting. So again, that first one that we did was an example of not putting ourselves in our customer's shoes, right? The difference between and ampersand and how that can impact search, and definitely an important lesson I hope everyone was able to get from that. This other example, so Acilion, I want to call it. They appear to be a secure file sharing type of website, right? So they're going up against Box.com and several others. And this one was actually fun for me to go through. Really kind of drove home when you really do SEO well and how to go about optimizing for a keyword. This is a perfect example, and hopefully you guys will think so too. Okay, so Acilion they signed up for this webinar. I don't know if they actually attended it. their secure file sharing website, right? And so I mentioned, one, you put yourself in your customer's shoes, identify the volume, make sure it makes business sense, right? And there's a model that we go through to see how many leads are at stake by getting better ranking. But so secure file sharing is the keyword. Right? This is a keyword that gets thousands of searches a month, and I would use that Google Planner tool to make sure it made sense. And look who's ranking #1 for that. SmartVault. I have never heard of these guys before. Never, right? They're outranking Box.com and Dropbox and all these other folks who probably have much bigger marketing teams. And I bet you they're looking at this and saying, how in the hell did they outrank us for that particular term? Right. And again, we're analyzing Acilion, who's attending this webinar, right? But I want to kind of break down the optimization done by SmartVault here. Beautifully done, right? Keyword within first position of the page title, keyword exactly in that order within the URL, close to the root, close to the home page, right? They have a flash features in between. Ideally, I'd probably get that closer to the home page because the home page can more readily lift up the deeper page. And then they have it within the meta description a couple times, right? Really well done. I give them an A+ on-page optimization from the 3 areas that Google pulls from that page. But let's look at the actual page itself. Right, and I've done a control find, secure file sharing, and from an on-page perspective, they mentioned the term 8 times. Right, so right within what we call an H1 tag, a header tag, they've done an internal link for that particular term. Right, this page is so important to them that it's part of their navigation, and this is highlighted in the bottom, secure file sharing. Right, so they internally remember the internal links that we saw in that tool. This is another one of those ways to kind of pass equity within the top navigation. Google actually looks at these links in the nav and footer and place priority over those versus internal links, believe it or not, within the actual content. So when I compare, this optimization strategy, this is very well optimized for, and in fact so well done that they're beating Box.com and several others who I recognize and use. Right, so they're getting first crack at these prospects who are doing searches for secure file sharing because they prioritized SEO. It was a company priority. They mapped them to the right page. They put themselves in their customer's shoes. So all the things that we've kind of learned during this webinar, but they've taken it one step further too. And I'm using that tool again, and I'm comparing, again, in this case, the deeper secure file sharing page, right, the page that ranks, versus Acilion, and they were smart enough to get a secure file sharing page. And what I like about what they did is they got it closer to the root, right? They didn't get that slash features in between there, an unnecessary parameter in order to have the homepage lift up that deeper page, right? So if you're redesigning the website, we always advocate flatter architected websites for those reasons. But again, the total linking root domains, they have 7, and they're not leagues behind here, right? They have 7 URLs linking to their homepage versus their 2. And again, there's a difference between quality and quantity, right? And let's look at some of these 7 links that they've garnered here. So I'm going to click on the anchor text tab here, secure file sharing. Wouldn't you know it? Exact match anchor text, and what are they using? You guessed it, PR Newswire. They have some partner links in here as well, right? This isn't like head and shoulders, oh, I'm thousands of links behind. If these guys, Acilion, made it a company priority, they invested in this, they could very quickly make some headway on that term secure file sharing, just looking at how these guys have done it. And let's look at a couple of these links that these guys, SmartVault, has gotten, right? Here's that PR Newswire. And this is why it's important to do smart press release links. And I know we have a minute left, and if you have to leave, again, I'm recording this. Hopefully you found it helpful, but feel free to reach out in the Q&A chat if you'd like for us to do something similar for you. So within the boilerplate, the About Us, see that? Online documentation, document storage, and secure file sharing. Look at the bottom left. That is a very well done type of link. Why do people do this? PR Newswire is a paid service. They do this because guess what? Other people can pick up this type of link. And sure enough, here's one website that did that, right? Intuitiveaccountant.com. Who knows what this website is about, right? But they picked up this press release that they released on PR Newswire. And sure enough, within the boilerplate, the About Us, they left secure file sharing as that link, and that then is a vote from this website for Smart Vault for that deeper, well-optimized page secure file sharing. And I can go through example after example, and hopefully some of this is stuck in terms of, and there's a lot in this webinar, I get that. And so again, we're going to record this. Hopefully you find some of this helpful, and I won't keep you anymore. But I'm going to go ahead and bring up this. If you'd like for us to go through a similar type of analysis for your website, feel free to reach out in the Q&A chat or reach out to me directly, mike@digitalreachagency.com. So with that, hopefully some of these SEO habits of world-class companies was helpful for you and your business to help you get more out of your demand gen efforts. I'd love to help you in your efforts. Feel free to reach out. And if we don't hear from you, we'll see you on the next webinar 2 weeks from now. We'll send out the topic here in the next few days. All right, folks, thank you for your time, and I'll see you on the Q&A chat a little bit after to answer questions if you want to take advantage of the analysis. All right, folks, thanks. Bye.